You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for November 26, 2024. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, it's the Professional Left podcast with Driftglass and Blue Gal. And this week, we're going to open with a song. And thank you to Mama New for permission to use it.
Worrying has never changed a thing. And so all that I can do is try to bring a sense of steady calm till I know what's going on. 'Cause worrying has never changed a thing. All that I can do is trust and wait, and try my best to gather information. I can try to be prepared, and I can do it scared, but worrying has never changed a thing. All that I control is myself. No, I cannot control anybody else. So I'll do what I can do, then wait and see what's true. 'Cause worrying has never changed a thing. Worrying has never changed a thing. And so all that I can do is try to bring a sense of steady calm till I know what's going on. 'Cause worrying has never changed a thing.
Today is our last podcast before Thanksgiving. And next week being the first Tuesday of the month, we're planning on coming back with an episode of Science Fiction University.
Fingers crossed. Fingers
crossed. We think we'll be doing it. Got a lot of science fiction under our belt this week, so yep. We're looking forward to that. I want to talk for a minute about that song from Mama New. It's Mama, M-A-M-A, and then N-O-U-S. And this song, which I found incredibly helpful, is on Prime Music, and I believe it's also on Spotify. She said wherever you get your music. I've put a link to her Instagram in our show notes, and also got permission. As I said, I got very gracious permission to use this song on our podcast from her. And I just found it so helpful to get us back to ignoring the nonsense, because there's so much of a push for attention, not just from right-wing and mainstream media sources, but also from certain people who are supposed to be our friends who want to amp up the sense of trauma to get our attention. And we don't need that. I know I don't need that. I personally survived hearing the words, "Your child has autism." I've escaped an abusive marriage. I am now dealing with all 3 of my immediate family members who are left having cancer. And not me. For some reason, survivor guilt, I've been spared so far. But my mom and my 2 sisters are all dealing with cancer right now.
Your dad?
My dad, excuse me. My mom passed away, in 2016, so from cancer. So if you think that I'm going to be distracted at this point by that syphilitic monster who's not even in the White House right now, he's sitting at Mar-a-Lago recovering from a facelift. That's what I figure is happening. I'm also not going to be listening to Instagram reels to tell me it's going to be worse than my own imagination can create. Because I'm not imagining squat right now. I am focused on the present. And I realize that sounds like something you would say at a Lake Tahoe journaling retreat. Just focus on the present and everything will be fine.
Here's the prompt.
Yeah.
Here's your writer's prompt. Remember when?
Yeah, right. No.
No.
I'm not. That's not it. This is focus on the present as if you are in the trenches.
Right.
Because that's life-saving. What's going on right now, and how do I react to it? And so I am on alert, and I am focused on the present. And I also, though, have not forgotten how incompetent the previous Trump administration was. They're going to get the tax cut extended. That's obvious. The Trump tax scam will go on.
Yep.
But the rest of it, I mean, I got very profane yesterday on social media about this stupid tariff bullshit when he's not president yet. And the brain cells that composed that tweet are going to be dead by January 20th. Mm-hmm. He doesn't remember. And Reince Priebus said the way we dealt with Trump in 2016 to 2020 was we'll do that in a week. And then he just forgot. So the other thing I am doing is taking some time to escape.
Yes.
I recommend knitting, and I get a very small amount of scotch sometimes in the evening. If you're in recovery, I appreciate that, and I congratulate you. Excuse me. I congratulate you. I certainly don't recommend scotch for people that are in recovery. But otherwise, I'm having a little sip of scotch and knitting in the evenings.
Yeah. I'm
watching some science fiction, catching up on our science fiction.
And I built some stuff this year.
Oh, yeah. Driftglass is a woodworker.
Not yet.
Well,
I'm an aspiring amateur woodworker. I built myself a desk for my computer setup, which is just the cheapest possible aggregation of scrap wood and metal you've ever seen in your life. I built myself a bench. Well, it's for everyone, which turned out very well on the deck.
It's lovely.
It took a try. I had to get rid of one of the legs because everything went wrong with it, and there's still flaws that I see. And I built an ugly Christmas tree, which isn't really that ugly, but
it's beautiful.
We can't have organic trees in the house because cats will eat them, and we can't have plastic trees because the cats will eat them.
Right.
So I knocked together a wooden Christmas tree this year.
That's really nice, and we're going to put lights on it. And so this year we'll actually have a tree indoors.
Yeah.
Made by Driftglass.
Yeah.
We should take a picture of that once we've got it all lit up.
That's part of my, way to relax, which is do something with my hands that I can accomplish that is meaningful for my family, adds good to the world, and it keeps me focused. Don't play with circular saws and drills if you're not focused.
We will post a picture of the tree Driftglass made once we get it all lit up at our Patreon page.
And we'll post a picture of Blue Gal once we get her all lit up on scotch. And,
no, we will not.
And knitting. No?
Driftglass pours the scotch for me.
Yeah.
And he brings 2 glasses out so we can cheers and shake and everything. And mine is about 1/5 the level. And because he knows what an easy date I am from experience.
Right.
Oh my gosh. I'm drunk now. Now, look, on a more serious note, we've succeeded in this podcast getting our listeners to really have a light bulb moment anytime anyone on television says both sides. Everyone listening to this podcast knows that when someone on television says both sides are equally bad, or both sides did this, or Republicans and Democrats alike, we know that's false equivalence. We know that means you're covering up for a Republican evil.
Right.
By creating false equivalence. All right. We're going to do another one that we would like you to listen for and realize that this is also a cover-up for Republicans. It's the word controversial. And it is absolutely a way to cover up Republican evil. If someone is rapey or if someone is racist, along with a host of other things. Nope, that's just controversial. Trump's controversial pick.
Yeah.
For DOD chair.
Because it caused a controversy,
Yeah, it's not controversial. He's credibly charged with sexual assault. Now, I'm not going to make any of our podcast listeners listen to Tomi Lahren's voice. I'm not going to clip that in here.
That's your Thanksgiving gift to them.
That's your Thanksgiving gift from me to you. I'm just going to read the transcript via Wonkette, essential reading Wonkette. But I would like you to keep, if you're not driving while you're listening to this, please keep account of the number of times Tomi Lahren on Fox says controversial about Matt Gaetz. Here we go. Quote, obviously, Matt Gaetz was a very controversial pick. Some would say maybe the most controversial pick that Trump could have selected. So now, whoever he picks as his second choice, they'll probably receive a little bit less scrutiny. They won't have as much heat on them. So I think both the nomination and the withdrawal of Matt Gaetz was very strategic for the Trump team. It also took some of the heat off of the other picks that were also controversial, but perhaps less so than Matt Gaetz. So I think it kind of gave cover for some of the other controversial picks and whoever he picks as his second choice. I think they're going to have a much easier time because they will not be as controversial as Matt Gaetz. It would be hard to find somebody more controversial for that pick. So I think it's been very strategic. Did you get all 6 times Tomi Lahren said controversial?
Say
controversial.
Again, I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say
controversial.
One more goddamn time.
Now, the problem with you reading that is you infuse it with more IQ than Tomi Lahren has in her whole body.
With my intake of air.
Yeah.
Actually,
you just inherently make it sound more intelligent than anything that would come out of that crazy bitch's mouth. Now, today being Tuesday, we haven't done this in a little while. We're going to do a little no fair remembering stuff exercise. Remember no fair remembering stuff? Boy, that was fun. We used to have such fun doing that.
We kind of integrated that now into our show.
We did. We might disaggregate it later and just make specific issues and specific topics into no fair remembering stuff. But this one should be easy because it all happened just 8 months ago. And it was a very, very big deal at the time. See if this brings back a memory that you'd rather forget. Over at NBC's little brother network, MSNBC, we may be one of the very few who remember the failed Too Far Right campaign, from which MSNBC learned absolutely nothing.
Yep.
Brian Williams came and went, and they learned nothing. And Mark Halperin came and went, and they learned absolutely nothing. Chris Matthews came and went, and they're dragging his sorry ass back, and they learned nothing. Steve Schmidt came and went, and then he came and went again, and then he came and went again, and they learned absolutely nothing. They gave Hugh Hewitt his own fucking show, and it bombed. He came and went, and they learned nothing. They gave Greta Van Susteren her own show, and even had network superstar Rachel Maddow push the hell out of it, and it bombed. And Van Susteren came and went. I believe she's now at Newsmax, and MSNBC learned absolutely nothing, except they did learn something. They learned exactly how passive and docile their core audience is over the long haul. You see, you could make a huge mistake. You could really piss off the audience. And they'll beef loudly for a little while, but in the end, they'll all come back. And their big mad will fade away. Because after all, where else are you going to go? To the blogs? To radio? To Democracy Now? Remember, blogs are dead, Blue Gal. And liberal radio is dead, Blue Gal. And Democracy Now! Is somewhere north of station 1978 if your cable company carries it at all.
But when NBC tried to add Ronna Romney McDaniel to their lineup, I want to reiterate this. Earlier this year, things did take a turn.
Yes, they did.
First came the rollout with this note to network staff by NBC News Senior Vice President of Politics, Carrie Budoff Brown, on a Friday. Quote, it couldn't be a more important moment to have a voice like Ronna's on the team. She will contribute her expert insight and analysis on American politics and the 2024 election across all NBC News platforms. Yay. As we gear up for the longest general election season in recent memory, she will support our leading coverage by providing an insider's perspective on national politics and on the future of the Republican Party, which she led through some of the most turbulent and challenging moments in political history, unquote.
Yeah. Challenging is up there with controversial.
Controversial, yeah. This meant that Kristen Welker's already ill-advised interview of McDaniel on Meet the Press that Sunday was no longer an interview of the former RNC chair, which is bad enough, but an interview with Welker's newest colleague.
Surprise!
Yeah. And as we know, one of the iron rules of the Beltway media is thou shalt not talk shit about thy colleagues at the same company. Yep. So what was Welker supposed to do?
Yeah.
Like welcome her aboard and then interview her?
Yeah. As what?
As what? Right.
And, it's not like Romney's credibility was extant at all anyway.
No.
This is just a horrible idea. And the blowback came from every direction. This is from Vanity Fair just 2 days after that announcement. Quote, Ronna McDaniel won't be appearing on MSNBC. Intense internal backlash has followed NBC News' hire of the former RNC chair as a political analyst. Just days after NBC News announced it was hiring Ronna McDaniel as a political analyst, MSNBC's president, Rashida Jones, told employees that the former RNC chairwoman won't be contributing on air to the cable network, the Wall Street Journal reported on Saturday. The decision to hire McDaniel was met with intense public backlash. Critics pointed to her close ties to Trump and her behind-the-scenes role in his attempt to overturn the 2020 election. The Wall Street Journal reported that a number of MSNBC anchors and producers have voiced concern internally about the hire. Some current and former contributors and employees have also, gone public.
Mm-hmm.
On Friday, MSNBC columnist Marissa Kabas posted on social media a screenshot of an email she sent to Brown in which she encouraged her to reconsider the hire. As columnists, we are held to strict standards of factuality and truth, and are expected to have a fundamental understanding of our democracy, she wrote. McDaniel has proven time and time again that she adheres to none of those values, unquote. And then perhaps someone higher up the food chain, presumably higher up than NBC News Senior Vice President of Politics Carrie Budoff-Brown, sent Chuck Todd in to do damage control, or maybe he just took it upon himself to do it.
Let me deal with the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I think our bosses owe you an apology for putting you in this situation, because I don't know what to believe. She is now a paid contributor by NBC News. So I have no idea whether any answer she gave to you was because she didn't want to mess up her contract. She wants us to believe that she was speaking for the RNC when the RNC was paying for her. So she has credibility issues that she still has to deal with.
And from the New York fucking Times, March 24th of this year, quote, Chuck Todd and Morning Joe hosts object to NBC's hiring of former RNC chair. The extraordinary comments on Meet the Press revealed tensions in NBC's news divisions over Ronna McDaniel, who recently stepped down as head of the RNC. Joe Scarborough, at the top of Monday's edition of the influential MSNBC show Morning Joe, echoed Mr. Todd's criticism. We weren't asked our opinion of the hiring, but if we were, we would have strongly objected to it for several reasons, Mr. Scarborough told his viewers. His co-host, Mika Brzezinski, added, we hope NBC will reconsider its decision. Ms. Brzezinski said that it goes without saying that Ms. McDaniel would not appear as a guest on Morning Joe, unquote.
So, Watson, what can we deduce from this? Well, we know that the price that media celebrities pay for their huge salaries and influential shows is that most of the time they have to wear a leash. And this includes non-disclosure agreements and booking deals with agents that handle multiple clients, So if you want client A, you'll have to put client B on the air. And the corporate policy that thou shalt not talk smack about thy network colleagues. Those are the rules that we can all see happening right in front of us. So 1 week, Bloody Bill Kristol is an object of ridicule at MSNBC. And the next week, he's everybody's affable Uncle Bill. Kicking it with Killer Mike, and all is forgiven, and most importantly, all is forgotten. That's the important part. 1 week, Matthew Dowd is the biggest dispenser of the both sides do it lie on any network anywhere. Then after a little time on the bench, he returns to MSNBC as one of the biggest critics of both siderism. Isn't that nice?
Having deleted his entire Twitter feed.
Yeah. And no one remembers otherwise, and no one remembers the past, and he's just a brand new person with no history at all.
Except if some dirty bloggers do in the Midwest. They remember.
Well, they remember, they get blocked right away.
They get blocked right away. Yes, they do.
According to legend, Rachel Maddow used to have a rule about this sort of thing, back when they used to talk about integrity in capital letters, that if something really big went down, and she conspicuously avoided talking about it, how could her audience ever be sure that she wasn't keeping other important information from them? That would destroy her credibility. And in the case of Ronna Romney McDaniel, we saw how on-air celebrities could rise up and defy management and win if they chose to, if they were willing to take the risk for the sake of their own credibility.
And I remember that Lawrence O'Donnell was supposed to have that Monday night off. And all of a sudden he was on the air because he had to talk about how NBC News should not have hired her.
How indefensible it was. Absolutely.
Yeah. But that brings us to the case of Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, where we see something quite different happening.
Yes, we do.
It has been a week since they went down to Trump's Führer bunker to bend the knee and ignore that he's recovering from a facelift. I'm just going to say, which is hilarious given the number of times he talked about Mika bleeding from her face because she had a facelift. This is from the AP, quote, "At the crossroads of news and opinion, Morning Joe hosts grapple with the aftermath of Trump meeting. One of the striking things about how furiously many people reacted to the news last week that MSNBC Morning Joe hosts Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski met with President-elect Donald Trump was how quaint their defenders sounded. It is insane for critics to not think all of us in the media need to know more so we can share/report more. Jim Vandehei, co-founder of Axios and Politico, said on social media. Scarborough, a former congressman, yeah, you could put it that way, and his wife, veteran newswoman Brzezinski, there's so much unsaid in that fragment right there. Didn't just talk about the presidential campaign from their 4-hour weekday perch. They tirelessly and emotionally advocated for Democrat Kamala Harris, liking Trump to a fascist in waiting. They have portrayed themselves as bastions of integrity, standing up to a would-be dictator, says Frank Sesno, a former CNN Washington bureau chief, now professor at George Washington University School of Media and Public Affairs. What the followers see is the daily procession of people on the show constantly talking about the evils of Donald Trump. And then Joe and Mika show up and have high tea with the guy.
Yeah.
Unquote.
Yeah. It was a slap in the face. And once again, just like we did last episode, we're going to talk a little bit about negative space, the negative space around this story. The space left.
Let me ask you something, though.
Sure.
Do you think that the blowback would have been as strong? I know I'm asking a lot of hypotheticals in there.
Go ahead,
had they
baby.
not had Trump on throughout 2015 and 2016 and as a phone-in interview, and also clearly had a personal relationship with Trump as friends during that time?
Probably. But what you're hypothesizing is, imagine if Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski weren't Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski.
I know. Yeah.
Then what happens? Well, then they'd be,
right.
I don't know, Rachel Maddow.
They'd be somebody else. Yeah.
They'd be somebody else, but that's not who they are. They always have been this way. And people have just been willing to pretend otherwise. Because, again, where else are you going to go?
Right.
Where else on liberal television do you get your fix at 8 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
So that's why we're going to focus on the negative space in this story. The space left by the thing that isn't there. From Sherlock Holmes' story, The Silver Blaze.
Is there any other point to which you wish to draw my attention, Mr. Holmes?
To the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime.
But the dog did nothing in the nighttime.
That is the curious incident.
This is from Fox News, believe it or not. Quote, MSNBC contributor trashes network, shreds Morning Joe colleagues over Trump meeting. This is not working. We don't know if MSNBC a year from now is going to exist, Jennifer Rubin warned. MSNBC commentator Jennifer Rubin went on an unprecedented tear against her own network as well as her Morning Joe colleagues, Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, on her podcast, defiantly criticizing her employer's business model. Isn't that striking? The business model. Their fucking not news, not journalism, but their business model. And ratcheting up her attacks towards the duo for revealing their meeting with President-elect Donald Trump, unquote. Pretty much the same headline from The Wrap. Same person. MSNBC contributor Jennifer Rubin slams Morning Joe host Trump visit at Mar-a-Lago as appalling. And that's it. That's all there is. Mm-hmm. Now, we scoured the websites and social medias of all other MSNBC main on-air celebrities and guests, and only Jennifer Rubin, who's willing to publicly speak out against what Scabs and the Meat Puppet did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We checked what's been going on at MSNBC subdivision. You know, the one called the Bulwark? That little bitty division of MSNBC called the Bulwark? Not a word of criticism, not a whisper of it. As of November 17th, Tom Nichols himself from The Atlantic was still urging people to watch him on Morning Joe, where he is a regular every week. You can find Tom Nichols being a curmudgeon on Morning Joe. There were a whole bunch of replies to that. One from someone with very, very few followers, but who was very angry with him, called Deco Diva. This is what Deco Diva had to say to Tom Nichols about him saying, "Come watch me on the Joe and Mika show." Quote, "Done with Morning Joe after the ridiculous performance after election. The backspinning and bashing of Harris just like he did after being a Trump fanboy. Also his bloviating, endless talking, self-importance, and talking over people too," unquote. Now, Tom Nichols doesn't pick fights with people who are his own size. Tom Nichols just likes to, sort of have it out with people who are much, much, much smaller than he is. Mm-hmm. And he replied to this person who was upset with him going on this crap show with the "I don't care" gif from The Fugitive. Tommy Lee Jones going, "I don't care." Mm-hmm. Because Tom Nichols doesn't care. He's going to go on TV and give you his ideas. And the fact that this happened in front of him, and the people who were leading the charge and weeping bitter tears over Donald Trump are now having tea with him.
Yeah.
Nichols doesn't give a shit about that. This is his shot at television. I also checked with the bastion of CNBC or MSNBC contributors at The Atlantic, the other place where half the MSNBC staff write. Mm-hmm. Not a word, but this morning, David Frum was out there on social media blithely announcing that he was going on Morning Joe to discuss Trump's trade war. The social media blowback was pretty quick and pretty uniform. Doesn't matter, though, because he's going to go on that show, which lost pretty much half its viewers, to talk about the trade war, because that's what, not about complicity, not about surrender, not about bending over, but about whatever topic he was going to go on to talk about in the beginning. Again,
I want to go back for a minute and talk about Jennifer Rubin. Because in The Wrap, she talked about how the network is hemorrhaging their audience.
Yes, she did.
And that this is a business model problem.
Yes, it is.
And it seems to me that is where you punch them. That Jennifer Rubin knew where the soft spot in their belly is. Yeah. It's not, how dare you? It's not inconsistency in coverage. It's not hypocrisy.
No.
This is bad for your business model.
Yes.
So, yeah, I just want to highlight that.
Well, and understanding that Joe and Mika went down there to save their own careers.
Right.
And to stop, big bad man from destroying them, which he will have the ability to do. They went down there to beg for their jobs, basically. And screw the network. Fuck the network. Who cares what's happened to the network? We need to save our skins.
Right.
And the idea that, and they're betting on the idea that the MSNBC audience will come trickling back.
Yeah.
Because they always do. It doesn't matter how offensive the network behaves and how many things they do to prove they don't give a shit about what Democrats believe or what liberals want. The audience will always come eventually back because there's no place else to go.
I really would love to be a fly on the wall at Kamala Harris's house at 6 a.m. when she's on her treadmill. Is she still watching Morning Joe?
Yeah, good question.
If that was her thing, I wouldn't be. Driftglass, you had an amazing post at your blog this week.
I did. I stole a march. I stole a trope from the immortal Jonathan Swift, the satirist, and I wrote a modest proposal for how Democrats can win. Democrats can win in the future because all advice about Democrats winning is based on peeling off some number of the bigots and imbeciles from the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat us. And these are people who are motivated by hatred and fear, not by the price of eggs, not by working class conditions, because the Biden Harris administration has been great on those things. And we all know that the reason these people go to the polls is because Haitians are eating their pets, or the trans people are making their boys into girls at school. That's who we're dealing with. So, how can we get some of those people into our camp? And I went down a list of all the things that Republicans have already won when it comes to the hate war. They're already beating us on hating trans people. They're already beating us on hating Haitians and Venezuelans. And they've already got, Byron Donalds out front groveling for Donald Trump's approval. So self-loathing black people, they got those. They've got self-loathing women already on board. They've got all the usual groups that, you could hate on. They practically corner the market on all of them. So who can we hate that conservatives still despise out in the field, still want to make jokes about, but feel that the woke mob won't let them do it? Gays. Obvious. It's obvious. So the solution to our problem is to abolish gay marriage immediately. Come out strongly against gay marriage. And you don't even have to do it. You just have to say you're going to do it. Donald Trump has proved that he doesn't have to deliver on a fucking thing. And these morons will vote for him over and over again and think that he did a good job. So my modest proposal, which was, again, a riff on Jonathan Swift's modest proposal to eat Irish babies, was let's hate the gays again.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll get us enough votes because, I don't know if you know this, Blue Gal, but every time I've ever suggested that we do something different, like not let the Never Trumpers and Liz Cheney run our party, I was lectured rather roundly that don't I realize the fate of the republic hangs in the balance? Don't I realize democracy itself depends on letting Liz Cheney co-host my party? Well, I have the same question for you, Tim Miller and Pete Buttigieg and Sarah Longwell. I'm sorry that your marriages will have to end. I'm sorry that people will come and take your kids away from you. But don't you realize the fate of the republic hangs in the balance? Don't you think it's very selfish of you to hang on to your marriage when the fate of the democracy that we all live in hangs in the balance? I thought the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Yeah. Don't you want to be our sister soldier?
Right. You could be our sister soldier.
We can win and beat Trump.
And I guarantee you, I know this for a fact, out here in the real world, those people are not over it. They're not over the fucking Civil War.
Well, absolutely. And the Daily Wire guy, old guy on the Daily Wire, Andrew Clavin, who I'd never heard of before this week, He's host of the Andrew Clavin Show on the Daily Wire. Who knew?
Oh,
I don't even know who this Gorgon is. But he, this week, on his, Facebook podcast, said, the Supreme Court invented a constitutional right to gay marriage. That's just invented out of whole cloth.
Right. They're getting out ahead of us, Blue Gal.
Right. They absolutely are.
And I guarantee you, people out there in the world who want to go back to telling F jokes, who want to start calling people queer again and fairy again.
In a bad way, yes.
In a terribly bad way. And who feel that the woke mob has oppressed them and prevented them from doing what comes natural to them. And if we could just
2,000 years of Christian history backs them up.
Exactly.
That's the horrible part of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And remember, just go back 20 years to Matthew Dowd and Karl Rove. This was the strategy they used to help George Bush get reelected.
Win. Get black votes.
With those people.
Black people to vote for them as good Christian men.
So I'm telling you.
Yes.
I'm telling you, all you and the log cabin Republicans, they hate themselves. They'd be over on our place in a second. We only have to get some group of these people over on our side.
Yeah, you're being satirical here. I want to make sure everybody realizes that.
We need to bamboozle these idiots into the big tent long enough to get Democrats elected. And the way to do that is to pretend, first of all, find something they hate that they're paranoid about. Explain to them that they're very, very smart for thinking that. Mm-hmm. Praise them for their insight. Oh man, the liberals hate you for saying that, but it's true. And then promise that you'll make it go away. It's that simple. It really is that simple. And again, you don't have to deliver on any of it. But even if we are forced after fundraising and getting rich and getting lots of elections based on hating gay people, plus all the stuff we all enjoy, we can do it because the Supreme Court just decided there is no precedent anymore. Something, no precedent. Stare decisis doesn't exist anymore. And you know what? If push comes to shove, the president is now virtually a god who's immune from everything. So future president can just say, all right, gay marriage is abolished. I with a wave of my hand, I do it. I'm trying to convince people who read this, explain to them that finding a group, because I hear a lot about the word culture. Mm-hmm. The Democrats are dominating the culture. That the woke mob dominates the culture. And none of these assholes will explain to me exactly what they mean by the culture. Yep. And what they mean are people who are weaker or there's smaller numbers than we, who represent a tiny, tiny fraction of the population who it's safe to hate. Mm-hmm. So who isn't safe to hate anymore? Republicans have almost cornered the market. The only people left that it's safe to hate, that everyone thinks is now a thing in the past, but we know it's not, are the gays. So let's get on with it. To save the republic. Got to save the republic.
Yeah. It's sad that what you are saying is so close to what some Democratic analysts on MSNBC and Morning Joe
one tick away
are one tick away from saying that.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's what we have to do is punch somebody to make these white working class men realize that we're this much pro rape.
Yeah.
And then they'll vote for us.
Well,
it's nonsense.
And I forgot to include in our notes a YouGov study from 2022. And we'll pick it up next week, but it was how many people are there in various groups or have various characteristics, left-handed, people who, eat at home, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also what percentage of the population is gay?
Oh, yeah. And the number of people that think it's, this country is 40% Jewish.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And people who think 30% of the country lives in New York.
Yeah.
And 30% of the country, and the number, they were off on the estimation of trans people in the country by 2,000%.
Yeah, right.
Now, you got to ask yourself, how did that happen? How did they happen to believe, and it's all in the same direction? There's just way more black people. And
how did they happen to think that there's a constant caravan of quote-unquote illegals pouring across the border every day because Biden welcomes them?
Right. Where do they get these stupid ideas from? And where do they come with these percentages?
Yeah.
And I remember back when in the 90s, when I was arguing with people that I worked with at Columbia College about Jesse Helms, people telling that this conservative person who worked for me, who I dragged partially into the light, who swore that 25-30% of the federal budget goes to foreign aid. I think I talked about this before.
Yeah.
It was like at 1%. And they swore, no, it's like 25%. Most of my money, my tax dollars, goes to foreigners.
Yeah.
And it's because Jesse Helms kept saying it over and over again. This has been going on for a very long time. And it's deep. This stupidity about minorities and this feeling of I should have the right to kick the shit out of them because now I have an excuse. I hate them anyway because I'm just a hateful, small-minded person. But Republicans have given me a predicate for hating them because they're going to turn my kid into a girl who's a boy in school, doing operations in school, or they're eating my pets. And honestly, there's no way to reach people that dumb and that dug into their stupidity other than find something that they hate as much as they hate everything else and say, I'm on your side, buddy, and I'll fix that for you. And that is not a road that the Democrats should go down ever under any circumstances.
No. I think Junior Dude is absolutely right about that. Do not become Republican light. We lost this election by 1%.
Right. Yep.
And it's a rounding error. I'm sorry it is. And I'm furious about that. I'm sure everyone listening here is furious about that. Do not learn the wrong lesson here. Stand with our values. Don't be like Joe and Mika.
No, don't be like Joe and Mika.
Don't be like Joe and Mika. Be like Blue Gal and Driftglass.
Hell yeah.
Stick with your values.
And argue for them vigorously, but also don't hesitate to bash the crap out of people who are wrong and hateful.
Yeah.
And
dumb.
And don't take the high road, man. The high road leads you nowhere. The high road gets you nothing. Take that low road. Never miss an opportunity to cut the legs out from some MAGA idiot. And you know what's going to get there ahead of you? The great scythe of cause and effect. There's going to be some finding out happening real soon.
Yeah. What we believe will become a semi-regular feature here at the Professional Life Podcast and is a feature at Crooks and Liars is the fucked around and found out. The MAGA bigots are finally getting their wish. For decades, the only quote they ever remembered by Martin Luther King was about judging people not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And we are judging them by the content of their character all of a sudden.
We sure are.
And these MAGA folks are finding that very confusing. Because while we're supposed to sit still and be tolerant, the tolerant left, while they call us America-hating terrorist levy commie baby killers, who, by the way, perform surgery at school on their sons, they're supposed to be able to get on with their lives with no consequences after voting for a rapist fascist scumbag who is utterly corrupt. Because that was just a personal political decision, and it should not affect in any way how my family and friends treat me at all. As Steve M. says at No More Mr. Nice blog, we love him. There's no point in arguing with right-wingers on social media. They don't want civic debate. They want total political and cultural domination, to which I add, and they want you to be nice to them at the Thanksgiving table. This following audio is from Park Rose Permaculture on YouTube. It is from a compilation of her TikTok videos called Why Are Trumpers Mad That Folks Are Setting Boundaries?
I've been watching an interesting phenomenon play out both here and on Facebook, and I would love to know if y'all are seeing this as well. Okay, here it is. Folks who voted for Trump don't want us to kick them out of our lives, to cut them off. They want to desperately present themselves as good people. I've seen it both from friends and relatives on Facebook. Like, please, I just voted for the economy. Politics isn't personal. This is a private decision and it doesn't have to get in the way of our friendship. But I've also seen it on this app where folks are like, hey, please don't stop following me. Please still like me and watch my content so I can get paid. I'm not a bad person. I'm just an independent. I just voted for lower gas prices and lower prices of eggs. We can still be mutuals. You can still watch my content. Or folks who are content creators and are like, unfollow me if you voted for Trump. I've seen folks in their comment section being like, no, we can agree to disagree. I can still like you. I can still follow you. Y'all literally voted against the safety, well-being, rights, and future of the folks you are now asking to continue to have relationships with you. Why are you so desperate to be perceived as not a bad person? As like, don't let our differences get in the way of our friendship. It's not that big of a deal. Like, why don't you just own what you did? Aren't you proud of what you did? Why are you so desperate to continue relationships with folks who you want to see deported, denied access to health care, folks whose lives will become immeasurably more burdened and stressful because of what you did? This desperate need to be perceived as a good person and to not be cut out of people's lives, the inability to handle the distress of other people not liking you, the distress of having to realize the consequences of your action are irreparably damaged relationships. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when white people think that it is worse to be called racist, to have their racism pointed out to them, than it is for people to experience the racism that they are perpetuating. The discomfort, the agitation, the distress that it causes to have to face the fact that you are racist. You think that is worse than people experiencing racism.
Now, Driftglass has found several helpful YouTubers discussing this separation from the so-called MAGA family and why the consequences of voting for Trump are actually family separation, but not the kind you thought it was. These fall under the category of Trumpers fucking around and finding out. FAFO, baby. Mm-hmm. And we will link 3 of these YouTubes in our podcast description and give you a chance to go and watch them. Highly recommend it.
And now, a brief news roundup that does not include all of Trump's horrible cabinet nominations. Suffice it to say that for any of them, Jack the Ripper would be an improvement because at least old Leather Apron was clever, had studied anatomy, and knew his way around a knife.
Yeah, news roundup from Axios. Jim Vanderheis, founded that, Driftglass.
I know that. I've heard that.
Quote, Joe Biden's middle class agenda attracted $1 trillion in private sector investment. As one wag on social media said, the white working class rewarded the most pro-labor administration in decades by voting for the most anti-labor president in decades. LMAO. I don't want to hear another damn thing about the Democrats abandoning the white working class. Let's reward the folks who vote most for us. Next.
Yeah. Going forward, it's just that simple. Jack Smith just filed to drop the January 6th charges on Trump because Trump is corrupt. And
period.
Period.
I know there's been a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth over this. Uh-huh. It's just ordinary corruption, folks.
Yeah. Yep.
He bought the judges. He hired the judges. He dragged out. And I know people are mad about, the Justice Department dragging their feet on this. They didn't want to be a banana republic and go after the opponent of Joe Biden. And he's corrupt. It's just corruption.
And it's not just him. It's going back to appointing Tony Scalia to the court.
Yep, exactly.
And Clarence Thomas to the court.
These guys are corrupt.
Decades-long project to make sure the courts would never hold a Republican president accountable.
Would never hold a Republican president accountable. That's what it is.
And no matter how, and pack the lower courts so that whatever charge you bring, we're going to delay until, you know what? He won the election, so I guess it doesn't matter that the charges are valid and everyone knows.
The only reason he ran was so that this could happen.
Yeah.
So remember that too, because Trump will quote unquote go to work every afternoon, after executive time. And the question is, will these Project 2025 guys be able to write legislation that passes through the Senate? And how much damage will Trump do with tariffs? That's the other thing, to ask. I'm not worried because it hasn't happened yet.
Right.
And worry doesn't change a thing, as the song says. Mm-hmm. I am not afraid. I am angry, but I am not afraid. And on a lighter note, there is a link we're also going to put in our podcast notes. Genius parody from the Beaverton. Quote, opinion, blue sky is a dangerous echo chamber because no one wants to hear from me specifically.
Yeah, it's really good. It's funny.
Very funny.
And it does reflect a lot of the I'm politically homeless now because, on the one hand, Democrats want to keep saying Latinx. On the other hand, Republicans elected a fascist, and I don't know where to go because I don't want to be part of an echo chamber anymore, and I just don't know where to land.
But I want people to listen to me and pay me money for my opinions.
Exactly. I think people should be forced to listen to my opinions, which was the whole point of Twitter. And now they won't and can't, and that's just an echo chamber.
And
I think that's terrible.
My blue check is worthless.
Yeah. Hey, remember when Maggie Haberman told this country that it was unfair to connect Trump to Project 2025 just because, he's the biggest liar in history and he denied knowledge of it despite the fact he had ample evidence to the contrary and knew the people that wrote it and his vice president wrote the foreword to it. Guess what? Trump is appointing some of its authors to powerful positions in his cabinet.
And he's also suing the New York Times for $1 gazillion.
Yeah.
Because he's mad at their coverage. So, Trump's pick for Surgeon General has previously sold vitamin supplements on Fox News. So has his pick for ambassador to Israel.
Yeah. Trump plans tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China that could cripple trade. President-elect Trump promised a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico and an additional 10% on China, blaming the flow of drugs and migrants.
And the president of Mexico has pointed out to him that the guns come from the United States, the drugs are consumed in the United States, and he can fully expect retaliatory tariffs.
What? They can't tariff us, can they, Blue Gal?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yes, they can.
Trump aide is accused of asking for money to promote potential appointees because he thought that's how the Trump administration operates.
Right. It is how they operate.
And it is, but the money can't go to Boris Epstein. It has to go to Donald Trump.
Right.
So Donald Trump has ordered the investigation by his legal team into Boris Epstein. He's a powerful figure in the transition driftglass. And Mr. Epstein denies the allegations, but this is how it's going to go.
Yeah.
It's going to be Corey Lewandowski dropping a dime to Axios or Fox or wherever he has to get rid of people that he thinks are getting more of Trump's ear than he is.
Yeah. Everyone there has knives. Everyone there hates each other. And everyone there is looking out for themselves. And who can carve the biggest slice?
What was the line? The vipers? It's not basket of vipers, but it's whatever it is. That's what they are. They're just all vipers biting each other.
Bag of rats. Big bag of rats.
Big bag of rats. That's it.
Louisiana lawmakers passed an income and corporate tax cuts, raising statewide sales tax to pay for it. So we're going to tax poor people to pay for rich people's tax cuts.
And it's so much worse than that. I went and did some research into this. There are very high local sales taxes in Louisiana as well. And people in some parishes are going to be spending 10% taxes on their Netflix, on all their streaming services, because they've decided they can tax that too.
To watch True Detective episodes about Louisiana, which seems redundant to me, but that's okay.
Yeah. Pedantic centrist Fareed Zakaria doesn't disappoint. He apparently doesn't want to go to the top of the deportation list. So, quote, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who will be in charge of Doge, are both brilliant. And the federal government has clearly become too expensive. Dumbass.
Yeah. Well, he's
Don't watch CNN. What are you doing?
He's a centrist. He just he's out there. He's like filler, just centrist padding out there in the world.
Honestly. Hey, feel free to write both of us at proleftpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go, postal unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
Don't forget our gourmet coffee guidelines. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job. If you can spare $5 a month, please spare $5 a month at patreon.com/ProLeftPod. Please share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, please try to get someone to listen to it over the holidays, because nothing says Thanksgiving and Christmas than a couple of Midwestern podcasters telling you why Donald Trump sucks. And thank you for doing that.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties think if we open with a song, we should end with a story. So, I picked out a story about something that might be uppermost in the minds of many of you people out there. Revenge. So now, if you'll bear with me, I'm going to attempt to read to you the late Ray Bradbury's story, The Utterly Perfect Murder. It was such an utterly perfect, such an incredibly delightful idea for murder that I was half out of my mind all across America. The idea had come to me for some reason on my 48th birthday. Why it hadn't come to me when I was 30 or 40, I cannot say. Perhaps those were good years, and I sailed through them unaware of time and clocks, and the gathering of frost at my temples, or the look of the lion about my eyes. Anyway, on my 48th birthday, lying in bed that night beside my wife, with my children sleeping through all the other quiet moonlit rooms of my house, I thought, I will arise and go now and kill Ralph Underhill. Ralph Underhill, I cried. Who is he? 36 years later, kill him? For what? Why, I thought, for what he did to me when I was 12. My wife awoke an hour later, hearing a noise. Doug, she called. What are you doing? Packing, I said, for a journey. Oh, she murmured, and rolled over and went to sleep. Board, all aboard. The porter's cries went down the train platform, as the train shuddered and banged. See you, I cried, leaping up the steps. Someday, called my wife, I wish you'd fly. Fly, I thought, and spoil thinking about murder all across the plains? Spoil oiling the pistol and loading it and thinking of Ralph Underhill's face when I show up 36 years later to settle old scores? Fly? Why, I would rather pack cross-country on foot, pausing by night to build fires and fry my bile and sour spit and eat again my old, mummified but still living antagonisms and touch those bruises which have never healed. Fly? The train moved. My wife was gone. I rode off into the past. Crossing Kansas the second night, we hit a beaut of a thunderstorm. I stayed up until 4 a.m, listening to the rave of winds and thunders. At the height of the storm, I saw my face, a darkroom negative print, on the cold window glass and thought, where is that fool going? To kill Ralph Underhill. Why? Because. Remember how he hit my arm? Bruises. I was covered with bruises, both arms. Dark blue, mottled, black, strange yellow bruises. Hit and run. That was Ralph. Hit and run. And yet, you loved him. Yes, as boys, we love boys when boys are 8, 10, 12, and the world is innocent, and boys are evil beyond evil because they know what they do, but do it anyway. So on some secret level, I had to be hurt. We dear fine friends needed each other. I to be hit, he to strike. My scars were the emblem and symbol of our love. What else makes you want to murder Ralph so late in time? The train whistle shrieked. Night country rolled by. As I recall one spring when I came to school in a new tweed knicker suit, and Ralph knocked me down, rolling me in the snow and fresh brown mud. And Ralph laughing at me and going home, shame-faced, covered with slime, afraid of a beating, to put on fresh, dry clothes. Yes, and what else? Remember those toy clay statues you longed to collect from the Tarzan radio show? Statues of Tarzan and Kala the ape and Nurna the lion for just 25 cents. Yes, beautiful. Even now, in memory, oh, the sound of the ape man swinging through the green jungles far away, ululating. But who had 25 cents in the middle of the Great Depression? No one, except Ralph Underhill. And one day Ralph asked if you wanted one of those statues. Wanted, you cried. Yes, yes. That was the same week your brother, in a strange seizure of love mixed with contempt, gave you his old but expensive baseball catcher's mitt. Well, Ralph said, I'll give you my extra Tarzan statue if you give me that catcher's mitt. Fool, I thought. The statue's worth 25 cents. The glove cost $2. No fair. Don't. But I raced back to Ralph's house with the glove and gave it to him, and he, smiling a worse contempt than my brother's, handed me the Tarzan statue and burst with joy. I ran home. My brother didn't find out about his catcher's mitt and the statue for 2 weeks, and when he did, he ditched me when we hiked out into the farm country and left me lost because I was such a sap. Tarzan statues, baseball mitts, he cried. That's the last thing I ever give you. And somewhere on a country road, I just lay down and wept and wanted to die, but didn't know how to give up the final vomit that was my miserable ghost. The train thundered. The rain fell on the cold Pullman car windows. What else? Is that the list? Nope, one final thing. More terrible than all the rest. In all the years you went to Ralph's house and tossed up the small bits of gravel on his 4th of July, 6 in the morning, fresh, dewy window, or call him forth for the arrival of dawn circuses in the cold, fresh blue railroad stations in late June or late August, in all those years, never once did Ralph run to your house. Never once in all those years did he or anyone else prove their friendship by coming by. The door never knocked. The window of your bedroom never faintly clattered and belled with a high toss of confetti of small dust and rocks. And you always knew that the day you stopped going to Ralph's house, calling up in the morn, that would be the day your friendship ended. You tested it once. You stayed away for a whole week. Ralph never called. It was as if you had died and no one had come to your funeral. When you saw Ralph at school, there was no surprise, no query, not even the faintest hint of curiosity to be picked off your coat. Where were you, Doug? I needed someone to beat. Where you been, Doug? I had no one to pinch. Add all the sins up, but especially think on the last. He never came to my house. He never sang up to my early morning bedroom or tossed a wetting rice of gravel on the clear panes to call me down to joy in summer days. And for this last thing, Ralph Underhill, I thought, sitting on the train at 4 in the morning, as the storm faded, and I found tears in my eyes, for this last and final thing, for that I shall kill you tomorrow night. Murder, I thought. After 36 years, why, you're madder than Ahab. The train wailed. We ran cross-country like a mechanical Greek fate carried by black metal Roman fury. They say you can't go home again. That is a lie. If you're lucky, and the time is right, you arrive at sunset when the old town is filled with yellow light. I got off the train and walked up through Greentown and looked at the courthouse, burning with sunset light. Every tree was hung with a gold doubloons of color. Every roof and coping and bit of gingerbread was purest brass and ancient gold. I sat in the courtroom square with dogs and old men until the sun had set and Greentown was dark. I wanted to savor Ralph Underhill's death. No one in history had ever done a crime like this. I would stay, kill, depart, a stranger among strangers. How would anyone dare to say, finding Ralph Underhill's body on his doorstep, that a boy aged 12, arriving on a kind of time machine train, traveled out of a hideous self-contempt, had gunned down the past? It was beyond all reason. I was safe in my pure insanity. Finally, at 8:30 on this cool October night, I walked across town, past the ravine. I never doubted Ralph would still be here. People do, after all, move away. I turned down Park Street and walked 200 yards to a single street lamp and looked across. Ralph Underhill's white 2-story Victorian house waited for me. I could feel him in it. He was there, 48 years old, even as I felt myself here, 48, and full of an old, tired, and self-devouring spirit. I stepped out of the light, opened my suitcase, put the pistol in my right-hand coat pocket, shut the case, and hid it in the bushes where, later, I would grab it and walk down into the ravine and across town to the train. I walked across the street and stood before his house, and it was the same house I had stood before 36 years ago. There were the windows upon which I had buried those spring bouquets of rocks in love and total giving. There were the sidewalks spotted with firecracker burn marks from the ancient 4th of Julys when Ralph and I had just blown up the whole damn world shrieking celebrations. I walked up the porch and saw on the mailbox in small letters, Underhill. What if his wife answers? No, I thought. He himself, with absolute Greek tragic perfection, will open the door and take the wound and almost gladly die for the old crimes and minor sins somehow grown into crimes. I rang the bell. Will he know me, I wondered, after all this time? In the instant before the first shot, tell him your name. He must know who it is. Silence. I rang the bell again. The doorknob rattled. I touched the pistol in my pocket, my heart hammering, but did not take it out. The door opened. Ralph Underhill stood there. He blinked, gazing out at me. Ralph, I said. Yes, he said. We stood there, riven for what could have not been more than 5 seconds, but many things happened in those 5 swift seconds. I saw Ralph Underhill. I saw him clearly, and I had not seen him since I was 12. Then he towered over me to pummel and beat and scream. Now he was a little old man. I am 5'11", but Ralph Underhill had not grown much more than his 12th year on. The man who stood before me was no more than 5 feet 2 inches tall. I towered over him. I gasped. I stared. I saw more. I was 48 years old, but Ralph Underhill, 48, had lost most of his hair. What remained was threadbare gray, black and white. He looked 60 or 65. I was in good health. Ralph Underhill was waxen pale. There was a knowledge of sickness in his face. He had traveled as if he had traveled in some sunless land. He had a ravaged and sunken look. His breath smelled of funeral flowers. All this perceived like the storm of the night before, gathering all of its lightnings and thunders into one bright concussion. We stood in the explosion. So this is what I came for, I thought. This, then, is the truth, the dreadful instant in time. Not to pull out the weapon, not to kill, no, but simply to see Ralph Underhill as he is in his hour. That's all. Just to be here, stand here, and look at him as he has become. Ralph Underhill lifted one hand in a kind of gesturing wonder. His lips trembled. His eyes flew up and down my body. His mind measured this giant who shadowed over him at his door. At last his voice, so small, so frail, blurted out, "Doug?" I recoiled. "Doug," he gasped, "is that you?" I hadn't expected that. People don't remember. They can't. Across the years, why would he know? Bother. Sum it up. Recognize. Call. I had a wild thought that what had happened to Ralph Underhill was that after I left town, half of his life had collapsed. I'd been the center of his world. Someone to attack, beat, pummel, bruise. His whole life had cracked by my simple act of walking away 36 years ago. Nonsense. Yet some small, crazed mouse of wisdom scuttered about my brain and screeched what it knew. You needed Ralph, but more, he needed you. And you did the only unforgivable, the wounding thing. You vanished. "Doug," he said again, for I was silent there on the porch with my hands at my sides. "Is that you?" This was the moment I'd come for. At some secret blood level, I'd always known I would not use the weapon. I'd brought it with me, yes, but time had gotten here before me, and age, and smaller, more terrible deaths. Bang! 6 shots through the heart. But I didn't use the pistol. I only whispered the sound of shots with my mouth. With each whisper, Ralph Underhill's face aged another 10 years. By the time I reached the last shot, he was 110 years old. Bang, I whispered. Bang, 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 bang. His body shook with the impact. You're dead. Oh, God, Ralph. You're dead. I turned and walked down the steps and reached the street before he had called, Doug, is that you? I did not answer, walking. Answer me, he cried weakly. Doug Spaulding, is that you? Who is that? Who are you? I got my suitcase and walked down to the cricket night and darkness of the ravine and across the bridge and up the stairs going away. Who is that? I heard his voice wail a last time. A long way off, I looked back. All the lights were on all over Ralph Underhill's house, as if he had gone around and put them all on after I left. On the other side of the ravine, I stopped on the lawn in front of a house where I had been born. I picked up a few bits of gravel and did the thing that had never been done, ever in my life. I tossed a few bits of gravel up to tap the window where I had lain every morning of my first 12 years. I called my own name. I called me down in friendship to play in some long summer that no longer was. I stood waiting just long enough for my younger other self to come down and join me. Then swiftly, fleeing ahead of the dawn, we ran out of Greentown and back, thank you, dear Christ, back towards now and today for the rest of my life. The end. That was The Utterly Perfect Murder by Ray Bradbury.
Let's think about living.
Think about living.
Let's think about loving.
Think about loving.
Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.